Hey everyone, I'm Dan Sege from Hydro Ottawa, and I'll be hosting the ThinkEnergy podcast. So here's today's big question. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Join me every 2 weeks and get a unique perspective from industry leaders as we deep dive and discuss some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations that drive the energy sector. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the ThinkEnergy podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the ThinkEnergy podcast. Canada's electric highway is now a reality. Petro-Canada recently made a bold move to equip 50 of its retail outlets along the Trans-Canada Highway with electric vehicle fast chargers. EVIE owners can now drive from the Rockies to the Maritimes. It's nothing short of monumental for Canadian EV owners. Cities are also investing in infrastructure to facilitate their citizens' transition towards electric vehicles. More and more drivers are choosing EVs or electric vehicles, leaving fossil fuel behind and turning to electricity to power their vehicles. EV owners need a convenient, reliable, and fast turnaround in recharging their vehicles. So here's today's big question. Canada's electric highway is a great start, but how do we create a favorable environment for EV adoption? My guest today on the ThinkEnergy podcast is Al Cormier, CEO and President of Electric Mobility Canada, here to talk about barriers and opportunities that exist for the future electrification of our cities. Welcome, Al. Al, please tell us a bit about your organization and its mandate.
Hey, Electric Mobility Canada is unique in that it's the only Canadian industry association dedicated fully to the promotion of electricity in transportation. I founded it in 2005 and I retired from it in 2011. I'm back at it again because the CEO just retired and they're looking for another person. And so it's a fast-growing association. We have about 200 members coast to coast. We represent people from the industry side that build in electric vehicles, products, services, softwares, etc. People from the electrical utility side, like Ottawa Hydro. People on the government side. We have several government agencies, federal, provincial, municipal. Fleet managers, not-for-profit organizations, EV societies. These are individuals that support EVs. So it's a great group, and everybody in the same tent, and we address all kinds of issues.
National sales of EVs sit at around 3.5%. What are your recommendations to accelerate the deployment of electric vehicles in Canada?
3.5% is the percentage of new light-duty vehicles sales that are electric. So there's over 20 million light-duty vehicles in Canada. And at the end of the third quarter of 2019, we had about 150,000 electric vehicles in Canada. So it's a long way to go to replace the whole fleet, but that's not impossible down the road. So the market share is 3.5%, but the percentage of sales was greater in Quebec and British Columbia, which have very supportive programs for electric vehicles. The 3.5% is a national number. British Columbia was 10%. Quebec was 7%. So you have to look at what those provinces are doing to promote electric vehicle sales. But they both have a federal financial incentive program for the buyers of EVs. They have programs to install all kinds of EV charging stations or infrastructure. A lot of public awareness programs. They have bylaws at the local level that require uh, homes to be built ready for EVs, provincial regulations mandating the auto sector to sell a percentage of the sales being EVs. So a host of actions that can help set the market to be in a good condition for the sale of EVs. Now, last March, the federal budget announced a national incentive program for EV buyers that took place in May. It was implemented in May last year. That have bumped the sales nationally. We expect the final results for 2019 in the next week or so. And I expect that the 3.5% may well be closer to 4.5%, 5%.
Quick question, Al. You alluded to light-duty vehicles, the category. Yeah. What other categories are there?
Light-duty vehicles are passenger vehicles, pickup trucks, that kind of stuff. Then, of course, you get into commercial trucks, bigger vehicles, different classes of trucks. There's 8 classes of trucks. We get into transit buses. We get into school buses. We get into charter buses. And we get into off-road electrification. We have electrification in the marine side, in pleasure boats, in snowmobiles. We have electrification at the farming level, agricultural machinery as well. The mining sector, particularly helpful in the underground, where the ventilation problems are an issue. So there's electric mobility is spreading out into many, many sectors. We even have an electric airplane in British Columbia now.
When can we anticipate to see a shift from major automakers to enhance their EV product lines? Is it starting?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that all of them are in the business of setting themselves up for EVs. We have some that are committing to producing only EVs after a few years' time. And right now there's over 40 different models available, not always available in every part of Canada. But the auto industry is a complicated business. To introduce a new model is about a 4 or 5 year cycle. The time it's designed and tested and whatever, marketed. And and then they line up their productions this year for next year. So if there's a demand for EVs in any part of Canada, it sort of has to wait till the industry is ready. And of course, some people are not patient enough to wait for that. They've been enacting what they call zero-emission vehicle mandates. California, Quebec, and British Columbia are saying that we have a supply side problem, and they're requiring the auto industry to produce as electric a certain percentage of their production over time, and that percentage increases to 100% by 2040 in some jurisdiction. So they're being pressured by the regulators to produce more EVs. They're being pressured by the public that want to buy more EVs for economic and environmental reasons. And they have a hard job to do to transition their industry, so to speak, to meet that demand. But hopefully they'll catch up with public demand soon, and supply should not be an issue.
Is there a typical persona to an EV owner? In your experience, what do EV owners care about?
I've been watching this now for over 10 years, and I think the early buyers are people that are what we call the early adopters. They like new technologies, they want to try it out and everything else, and they'll go to great lengths to make it work. And the next phase of buyers have been those that have been buying it for environmental reasons, because they're getting more and more committed to reducing emissions of transportation, which is not unimportant. At the national level, transportation contributes about 25% of greenhouse gas emission. And in major cities, it's as high as 40%. So it's a big problem. So then we have the environmentalists have been sort of the next phase, but we're now seeing people buying EVs for economic reasons because they save the average user about $2,000 a year in fuel costs. And of course, servicing costs are a lot less because there's a lot less moving parts in EVs and they require less servicing. So that's attractive as well. So that's sort of the transition. And of course, in the last year, we've seen a lot of public demand for action on climate change, a lot of awareness. And I'm starting to see some TV commercials from auto companies promoting their electric vehicles. So that's good.
I would love to have your thoughts on the following. Getting more EVs on the road is a practical and effective way for Canadians to reduce pollution and fight climate change. But how are we offsetting EV drain on the power grid?
That's a frequently asked question. I have participated in evaluation of this topic in several cities, including yours in Ottawa, with an organization called Pollution Probe and Natural Resources Canada. We examined the grid capacity of several major cities in Canada, and basically they can adopt EV growth, with minor adjustments. Obviously, if everybody in the same street buys EV at the same time, they may have to adjust a transformer at the end of the street and that kind of stuff. But if you look back, I've been around a few decades, we went from clotheslines to house dryers. We have clothes dryers in the house now. And most EVs will be charged at home, and it's the same power level as the clothes dryer. So the utilities survived the transition from clothesline to clothes dryers because it didn't happen all at one time. It's just a slow period over a few years. And utilities have also survived the demand for air conditioning. Most homes years ago were not air conditioning, now they are. So we've adjusted, and I'm confident that utilities will adjust for electric vehicles as well. And I don't see any major technical challenges. It's just minor system upgrades here and there.
Home charging. Is it a barrier for the first-time buyers? Is mandatory residential EV chargers for new buildings a potential game changer? In Canada, only cities, towns, and municipalities in British Columbia appear to be instituting rules regarding residential chargers.
Yeah, it's a complex arrangement of rules and regulations. We have the National Building Code that recommends that buildings be ready for EVs. And then in most provinces, we have a provincial building code that regulates everything provincially and municipally. But in BC, they have local building codes as well. So what we're seeing in British Columbia is that these municipalities, again, because of promotion by the government and EV groups and so on, have adopted bylaw changes that amend their code so that a new home being built should be not pre-wired, but preset for EVs. That means running a conduit from the electrical panel in the basement to the garage. So it's very inexpensive to do at the time of construction. But if you come back and do it later, it could be in the thousands of dollars. Now, we proposed that, for instance, to the Ontario government, and it was well on the way to being legislated. And the change in the Ontario government last year, the current government listened to the construction industry, who maintained that it was an expensive thing to do, that it would add hundreds of dollars to the cost of a new home, and should not do it. So the Ford government says, okay, we won't require it. So we hope that that'll change in time in Ontario. I believe it's required in Quebec. In other provinces will be doing that as well. Now, the big issue, of course, are condos, multi-urban residential buildings. And we're fortunate that there's been a lot of work and research into that. And the solutions have been identified for condos. In Ontario, we have a law that requires condo boards to cooperate if a resident wants to have an EV charger in a garage. And because prior to that, we had some condo boards that said, we can't be bothered, we'll say no. So a lot of citizens live in condos, and a lot more will come in the future. So it's important for them to accommodate that. Now at our conference coming here at the end of April, we have an all-day workshop on that, how to do EV charging in condos, the role for utilities, condos, and municipalities, and so on. So that's sort of the next round of challenges to make it easier for home charging.
Hydro-Quebec has, for a number of years, invested significant amounts of work, effort, and money into building a network of fast charging stations in the province, including in areas where they don't necessarily expect that those charging stations would be getting a high adoption on their own. The result? A more even distribution of EV ownership between urban and rural areas. Is a better city charging infrastructure the key to increasing EV ownership? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the main key is quite a lot of public high-speed charging stations. Most EVs have ranges now that go all the way up to nearly 500 kilometers per charge. So, and most people probably just drive 30, 40 kilometers a day. So they might charge once a week. And most charging is done at home. I imagine you have an EV charger at home yourself for your car. Yeah? So, but if you want to venture out of Ottawa, you need the assurance that on your trip to Cornwall or Montreal or Toronto that you'll have EV chargers on the way. So those have to be public charging station. They have to be the level 3, the high-speed charging. So you can charge most of your batteries within 15, 20 minutes or so. And of course, we're seeing that being adopted now by Canadian Tires installing it at their stores. Petro-Canada is doing it. Quebec is on the lot in their province. And New Brunswick, Nova Scotia is doing that, and BC. So it's becoming an accepted practice. And the federal government is looking for another 5,000 such stations on major highways in Canada. So I think that the best strategy to promote EV growth is an extensive network of EV fast charging stations across the land, because private charging is largely done at home or at work. And so it's when you venture the longer trips that you need that assurance.
At least 1/3 of Canadians live in a multi-unit residential building today. Mm-hmm. And that number is not likely to decline. Increasingly, the residential real estate industry is moving towards multi-tenant construction. In Canada, 2 out of 3 homes built today are multifamily. In Ontario alone, nearly 700,000 households live in condos. Are there solutions for Canadians discouraged from buying electric vehicles because they have no easy means of charging them, either in condominiums, in apartment buildings, or homes that lack a driveway or even a garage?
Yeah. All of these things are being looked at. And as I mentioned, for condominiums, there are technical solutions out there. A lot of companies will come in and set up a charging system in the condo, manage it, and so on and so forth. And electric utilities are gearing up on how to deal with condos, assess the condo electrical system capacity, and come up with an easy process for the EV owner in the condo to buy and use and charge an EV. It gets complicated because when you buy a condo in a building, you are assigned a parking spot, typically underground or on the side parking lot. And that parking spot is tied by law to your suite. So you can't, say, move your car to a parking spot near the electrical panel. So you have to run power to the car parking spot. but it's not insurmountable, not all that expensive. So the condo solutions are there. There are companies promoting and assisting condos in doing that. There are legislation in some provinces encouraging, requiring condo boards to collaborate and help out. And then we have the other issues in older parts of cities. We have people that have cars that park on the street, no driveways, no garages. Some of that in Montreal, some of that in Vancouver, even parts of Toronto, and probably even parts of downtown Ottawa as well. And in those areas, there are technology where a charger can be placed on the sidewalk or next to the sidewalk, on the street side of the sidewalk, so to speak, and people can charge there and then pay for their electricity. Depends on the parking arrangement on the street.
Do you believe that EV adoption is directly tied to provincial or federal financial incentives for EV buyers?
Very strongly tied, yeah. We saw that in Ontario when they stopped the incentives in 2018. The sales dropped by about 40%. So because EVs at this point in time cost more than a regular car, these incentives help offset that cost difference. And that's the same with any new technology. As the sales volume go up and production levels increase, the per unit cost will go down. And there are strong predictions that perhaps in 5 years or less, electric cars will cost the same as an ordinary car, as a gasoline engine car. So these incentives are important in the meantime to help offset that cost difference. And we clearly see the evidence of where they exist. Sales go up, where they don't, sales are down.
Do you think the electric highway will move the needle?
Very much so. Like the electric highway, I guess, the term really means highways with charging stations along the route so people can travel without worries of running short of electricity. Yes, that's why the major companies like Suncor, Petro-Canada, Canadian Tire, and others are investing. The government's investing in those facilities along the highways, and that will remove the constraint from EV owners, the anxiety range that they have, or the range anxiety, pardon me. They're afraid that they'll run out of juice if they get out of town. So the electric highway is very much important, and it is moving the needle already.
Here's a good one for you, Al. What's your view on the role municipalities play in the electrification of transit?
Well, transit across Canada are a municipal responsibility. And of course, the municipalities buys the buses or light rail or whatever. Now, all the rail systems in Canada are already electric, so there's no worries there. And new ones being planned are also coming electric. But on the bus side, the emissions from diesel engine buses is not insignificant. And in major transit hubs like Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal, you have a lot of densities of buses in the city centers that are contributing significantly to pollution. So it's incumbent, I think, on municipalities to look at alternative technologies. There are hydrogen buses being developed, but that's a little bit down the road. We already have, though, electric buses. We have three companies making electric buses in Canada, one making electric school buses as well. So we have a lot of transit system buying electric buses and trying it out, and the success rate so far has been quite good. The federal government is hoping to see the end of diesel engine buses in the near future and a total switch to electric buses, and we encourage that. So municipalities obviously have to go along with this thing and plan accordingly. And the funding levels from provinces and federal government for the purchase of transit buses have to change to accommodate electric buses as well.
Can you talk to me about the EVIE 2020 conference coming up?
Yeah, that'll be our 11th annual national conference taking place in Mississauga at the end of April. And we're already very actively involved in developing the program for the conference. And it's the place to be if you want to talk about, or want to learn what's happening in electric mobility, technologies, policies, etc., or what's coming down the road. And we have about 500 people from across the country that attend these things. A marvelous exchange of information, strategies, and policies, particularly among the municipalities and utilities that don't compete with each other. We even have exchange within industry members. Some are competing with each other, but they collaborate. And we have speakers coming from universities, research centers, industry members. We'll be talking about, I would say, 15, 20 major project types dealing with policies, dealing with technology, dealing with trends. And we'll have 15 technical sessions with about 45 to 50 speakers, 7 or 8 major plenary sessions, a trade show where you see the latest and the greatest. So it's the place to be.
Al, thank you for joining me today. If someone wanted to reach out to you and connect, what should they be doing?
Well, they can go to our website, www.amc-mec.ca, or just click Electric Mobility Canada, and they'll take us to our website. Lots of information there. Or anyone can call me, 416-970-9242.
Again, thank you very much. I hope you had a lot of fun. Cheers.
You're welcome, Dan.
Thank you for joining us today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of the ThinkEnergy podcast. For past episodes, make sure you visit our website, hydroottawa.com/podcasts. Lastly, if you found value in this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Anyway, this podcast is a wrap. Cheers, everyone.